Welcome back to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about all things board game related. I'm your host, David Waybright, and today we're going to be talking about Ars Alchemia. It's from Tasty Minstrel Games. It's an anime-inspired worker placement game, and with me as always to help me explain the game, or probably do more explaining than me, Jeremy Salinas.
You said the magic word, worker placement, right?
Worker placement.
This is unique because of the fact that it is a worker placement where all of the areas change from round to round. So where you're placing your workers are the same locations on the board, but the cards in which you're activating are different.
Right.
Which is really cool.
You're really kind of collecting them in a way, except for the gathering cards. Yeah.
So, Ars Alchemia. Everyone is a chemist who is trying to transmute resources into victory points, so to speak. We'll go through the components real quickly, and then we'll walk you through a game round, and then give you our thoughts.
Yeah.
The first thing we'll talk about is the workers. The workers. Each player is going to start off with 9 of these workers, and there's going to be a pool off to the side, 2 workers that you can collect through the course of the game.
Yeah, and that will explode. This is one worker placement game where you're going to get more workers.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. Every player has a board in front of them. This is kind of a game in progress that you're seeing right now, but every player has a board in front of them. On that board, they have markers that denote the 5 different resources. 4 of those resources are resources that you can gather through card collecting or gathering collecting. The last resource is a resource that you can transmute. It's kind of a wild, but it's also worth victory points at the end of the game. It's the only resource that's worth victory points at the end of the game. Also, you have a track across the bottom, which tells you it's a set collection game as well. The more cards you collect or fulfill of a certain type of order, the more points it'll be worth at the end of the game. The board itself is broken up into a couple different sections. Each of these sections, and they're kind of hard to see on camera, so just stay, follow.
It is a busy board with a lot of colors.
So follow with me here. Each worker placement area in the game is represented by a card that will change from round to round. There is transmutation, which will allow you to fulfill the orders that you've collected over the course of the game. And there's 2 locations here and a third location that's kind of a go fish. Whatever comes up,
Take
comes
the top
up.
card and see what you can do.
These locations are represented by all these little gold areas that you see next to the location. This area is for gathering resources. Whenever you gather resources, you're going to change your track according to where you go. These are all orders. There's 3 types of orders. There's C orders, which are the easiest to collect. There's B orders, and then there's A orders. And you have to do those in a progression through the game.
Right, there's certain ways to get C orders of a certain type that allow you then to go on to B and so on.
Right. And the last location on the board are the assistants. These are cards that you will collect and place onto your side of the board that are unique to you, that only you will be able to take the benefit, or the actions that are involved with those particular assistants.
Yeah, that's where the game gets a lot of flavor and a lot of that sort of variability, so you can build your own game in front of you.
Right. The other main location on the board, 2 locations. One is a victory point track. The second one is this fountain. Anytime your workers get bumped off of a location, they go to the fountain, which you'll be able to collect at the end of the round. So
really, there's no effect at the fountain. It's just a holding grounds for
there
bumped
may be
workers.
An assistant. We haven't played
That's
with
true.
all the assistants.
That's
there may
true.
be some assistants in there that allow you to enact stuff at the fountain. So at the beginning of the game, there's a turn order. Turn order is not done in typical clockwise. Randomly, each one of these players will get one of these, and then after each of the 4 rounds in the game, after each round, the player who's in last place will go first. And so forth. Plus, it gives you additional workers depending upon what place you are. So a person who is leading the game and is going fourth is going to get 4 additional workers and so forth. So a turn is pretty simple, David. You want to walk through players on what you do for a turn?
It is pretty much just like any other worker placement game. You're going to take one of your guys or more, depending on where you're going.
Sure.
And you're going to place at one of these spots. Like Jeremy said, you're going to go here to gather. So you'd go here. You get a green and a blue with this card.
Right.
But with the gathering, among some other elements of the game, you'll also then roll this die to see if you can get some bonus resources.
If you look at these cards, and it's really hard to see, so we'll throw some of them on screen. You can actually see them here, but rolling perfects on some of these, this one says a 5 or higher. If you roll a 5 or higher on the dice, you not only get the blue and the green, but you also get a red. That's really important for the dice mechanism and how many workers you place.
Right.
Go ahead and talk to them about placing additional workers in a location and what that allows you to do when you place there.
Yeah, I mean, well, the first thing is if there's other people there, you have to place additional workers to go there.
Right.
But in addition to that, for every additional worker beyond that, so if there's an empty space and you go there with 2 workers, it's basically the mechanism. It's a plus one to help mitigate the die rolling in the game. So if you really want that red, in addition to the blue and green, you can go there with a whole mess of workers and mitigate the dice as much as you need to.
Every player is going to place 1 or multiple workers on their turn. So if David goes there, the first thing he would do is collect the resources, roll the die. If he rolls a 5 or a 6, he collects a red. If I wish to go there, just like David said, I would have to at least place 2 workers. One more worker than the number of workers there. When that happens, this pushes them to the fountain. If I place more than what is typically needed, that's when you get to roll dice. So,
exactly.
Just to clarify things real quick, if I went there with 4 workers and he had 1, I would only need 2, which means I add a +2 to my dice.
Right.
Because it's 2 more than I would typically need to go there. Again, that pushes them. I'd add 2 to the dice. If that combination is higher than 5 or 6, I get the resource. So
not only that, but then the next person who has to go there has to put 5 at least.
Workers. Yes.
So that it's really an interesting thing because you can go there, be the first person to go and go there with 5.
Yeah.
And it makes it a very difficult place for people to want to go from that point forward in the round anyway.
Right. The other places you can go are these locations. You're allowed to collect orders. You can collect any order that you so wish, but as David said, you're only allowed to fulfill them in a specific order. These require you to place on your board. You have 3 locations on your board where you can place them. Once you have 3, you can't collect anymore until you fulfill. And to fulfill them, you have to use resources in order to complete these orders. These are victory points for you at the end of the game, depending upon the number at the top of the card. And they also have a symbol, which is for the set collection portion of the game. Now, in order to fulfill these, you have to go to the Alchemist Lab.
Right.
And when you go to the Alchemist Lab, you get to go into one of these 3 locations. This tells you how many things you can complete. So 2 orders or 4 orders. Why would you want to complete 4 orders if you only have 3? Because you can transmute as well.
Right.
This is when you're allowed to take any 2 resources that you have on your board, say a blue and 1 green, to move up 1 on the gold. As we said, gold can be any resource you ever want it to be in the game.
And
it's worth a victory point at the end for every single one that you have. So those are the orders, and the last one are the assistants, and we already mentioned these. These guys allow you to do things like manipulate your dice when you roll.
+1 to transmute your die roll right there on the board right now. I mean, if you can imagine it, it's in this. I mean, this is actually a very healthy deck of this type of card for this sort of game.
Right.
And, you know, playing with Jeremy, I've come to know that Jeremy likes to grab a lot of these cards. I think our plays, you definitely. how many do you have?
6 on
at
one
least
game.
6.
Yeah. So at the end of the round, each player is going to keep placing their workers as many as they wish, bump people off. When every player passes, that means that they either have no more workers to enact or they can't physically do anything at that point because all the locations are blocked.
Right.
The round ends. Everyone takes all of the workers off of the fountain back into their area, and a new round begins. At that beginning of that new round, you have to look at the number of assistants that you have in your area. For each assistant that you wish to keep for that entire round, you have to pay one of your workers into the fountain.
Right.
So you're going into the round with less workers, which means you're not going to be able to do as much, but when you do, the benefits of them may be multiplied.
Exactly.
Just depending on what you have.
And there's a lot of mechanisms that start to take hold with those. I think there's even one assistant that allows you to get rid of other assistants and there being some benefit from that. So there's some nice little machines you can actually build up with those assistants. I didn't go deep on the assistants. I went really heavy on my workers. It didn't work out so well for me.
Yeah.
But I very quickly had a lot of workers. And what's nice is about, like Jeremy said, about the order gives you workers. If you're going 4th, you get 4 of your workers from the pool, which is a lot. I mean, there's
20 total.
20 total.
Yeah.
So in our games, most people had nearly all their workers, if not all their workers, by the end of the game. So you're putting a lot of workers out there. It allows you to bump people and make it more difficult to go to some of the spaces.
Right. The other thing we forgot to mention at the end of the round, all the locations will clear.
Oh, yeah.
And you will take those cards that cleared, place them on the bottom of their decks, and put new cards in those locations. So you never shuffle the deck. You're going to play 4 rounds of this. Again, every round is denoted by when players can't play any more of their tokens, Once the 4th round is complete, you're going to total up your victory points. You're going to total up all the orders that you've completed.
Yeah, the points on the faces of the cards.
The ones you've completed, all of your gold that you've completed, and then you're going to look at your orders as well and see which sets you have. Now, sets are important. There's several different icons in the game on these orders. For instance, there's gears, there's some bread down here, there's university hats, there's Luna moons and whatnot, and you're going to get victory points depending on how many of those you've collected and fulfilled through the course of the game. So you're also going to get negative victory points for any orders that on your tableau
that you haven't fulfilled.
Right. Divided by 2 rounded down. So you want to make sure that you can fulfill those before the end, or complete them, transmute them into whatever they're supposed to be transmuted to before the end of the game. So that's the game. I mean, it's very simple, and what's really cool about this is that, as I said at the very beginning of the video, is that the worker placement spots change. That's really unique in a worker placement game. Typically, when you play a worker placement game, you go to a location, you know what it's going to do. In this game, you really have to try to decide, like you said, do I want to go here right now, knowing that this card is probably not going to see action again until the 4th round? Mm-hmm. And is there going to be anything else that gives me that much blue? And what kind of orders do I need to fulfill, such as this one here that requires 4 blue? That's the best bang for my buck, so I need to make sure that you're doing those actions in a logical order. Where in a typical worker placement, you're doing long-term planning.
Right.
In this, your planning is very, very short-term, and it's from round to round.
Right. You really have to survey the board pretty well if you're going to excel at this game. Like you said, you look at the cards, okay, you could look at the first round, grab this order with a lot of blue on it, load up a bunch of workers on that spot, and grab the blue, and at the same time making it difficult for everyone else to go there. So you're going to kind of shut everyone else down on blue for a while, in a way.
Right.
So there's some strategies that I have never seen really in another worker placement game that come in like that. It's almost like a worker placement, but also like sort of an activation game. It's not like, the spots are so different, and some of them, it's just a worker placement spot where you're collecting something. You're either collecting resources. These are probably the closest to a normal worker placement game, even though they change. But these, you're going here, you take one of the orders, then it gets immediately replaced. So someone else can go there, but the order is going to be completely different.
The other thing this game makes you do that typical worker placements don't is that it makes you pay attention to whatever everyone else is doing. And the reason why I say that is because you're looking at how many workers they have available all the time on their space, because you're counting yours, you're saying, I have 4, everyone else has 1 left. That means at the end of the round, I may get some free actions out here by using just 1 worker in locations if they're not blocked off. So you're constantly paying attention. Is now the time in order to do that, or should I do it later?
That's true. That's the worker count, also the resources that they have. You can look at, see what people are going for, particularly towards the end of the game, if you want to try to stick them with if you've pretty much accomplished what you want to accomplish, you look over here and you know someone needs 1 more green, and you can place someplace where it makes it either difficult or impossible for them to get that green. They're going to eat those points at the end of the game, which is, negative points for them is positive points for you.
Right. So I dig the game. Now, there's some issues with it. Some people don't like this whole anime style look.
Yeah, I do.
Plus, all these cards the text is really small on them, especially the assistance where you have half of it's Japanese writing, and then half of it is English. Some people that turns them off. To me, I don't really care. And when you look at these are near impossible to read sometimes. They're so
things are very small
on there.
The cards are small. The text is small. Not a huge complaint, but I mean, if we're gonna look at what could be cons, that would be one of the things. And not for, like you said, the anime style.
I love it.
That's going to be a con for some people. It's going to be a pro for some other people.
If you look at this board, this is beautiful. This reminds me of a old Super Nintendo.
Yeah, SNES RPG. It really does feel that way. If you like anime and board games, this is kind of an easy buy. But I do think there's going to be some people who just, if anime doesn't appeal to them, they're not likely going to pick up the box. But you really should take a look at it nonetheless, because it's a really fun little worker placement game.
Yeah, especially if you're a worker placement fan like we are. So, guys, that is Ars Alchemia. Go take a look at it. It is coming out very soon, I believe, at BGG-Con this year from TMG Games. Make sure you guys make comments in this YouTube. Subscribe to us, please. Follow us on Twitter. Like us on Facebook and everything else. And we'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.
Season 1 of Man vs. Meeple is sponsored by TMG Games, publisher of great games like Yokohama, Guilds of London, and the soon-to-be-released Colosseum.